Dear and esteemed participants, I think that this is time to start. It is time to start our special global digital encounter dedicated to artificial intelligence and IP. We are doing a cycle of 4 presentations, of 4 sessions, led by Professor PRIYA KOHLI from Copenhagen Business School, aiming at empowering academics and professionals in better understanding, better managing AI in their IP job, in IP teaching, in IP dissemination. And this is why we prepared this very special series. We are very grateful of all the support received by various partners of Fide and of EIPTN. Fide and the European IP Teachers Network pool their forces for these webinars, for these sessions, for these special encounters. And therefore, we are also grateful to all those who support us on this occasion. We are also grateful to our public from intergovernmental organizations, from non-governmental organizations interested in IP teaching, who follow jointly with academics and with professionals these sessions aiming at empowering all of us, avoiding mistakes, making AI far away from our needs. So Professor PRIYA KOHLI has decided to dedicate this second session to preparing podcasts. How do we prepare podcasts? How do we work with podcasts thanks to AI and with AI? And she's one of the big specialists in EIPTN in doing it so. She's member of the EIPTN committee, just as her moderator and discussant, Professor Ulrika WENNERSTEN from the University of Lund, will raise questions, will challenge and construct next to Professor KOHLI this global digital encounter, especially dedicated to creating podcasts and with the use of AI connected to it. So at this very stage, I really wish to thank them for the immense work done, to PRIYA, of course, for the preparation of all the material, and to Ulrika for supporting, discussing, challenging our esteemed colleague as well. Well, I would now give the floor to PRIYA and Ulrika, and wish that our audience raise as many questions as you may wish in our chat. Professor WENNERSTEN follows the chat and would challenge and interrupt Professor KOHLI, as we did at the first AI IP session, so that your questions be part of our debate. I also thank our support team for the preparation of this activity, composed of course, Ruben Cano Perez, Andrea Valdomocchi, and Raul Ruiz from Bocconi University and University of Alicante for being next to us for supporting this activity. So now the floor is to PRIYA and to Ulrika.
Thank you very much. I hope you can see my screen.
We see it marvelously.
Okay, perfect. So we are going to start. First of all, hello everyone, and thank you so much, Laurent, for your kind introduction. I'm delighted to share some ideas with all of you today about how to create podcasts and how they can be beneficial in teaching IP. We are going to start off, of course, with a disclaimer. All of us being related to IP, we have to be careful that AI can make mistakes, and please don't use it or follow it blindly. It can spew fake content. We have various examples, actually some serious examples from the United States, where some advocates have actually lost their license because they used AI to make their briefs. And in the briefs, there were reference to case law that didn't exist. So fake content can be, seen being generated with AI. Therefore, please be very careful. And yes, of course, it cannot replace your teaching just yet. And please always check the content that is generated before you post or before you use it. Just to set the scene, I'm going to share some statistics with you. These are from a survey. I will only share 2 questions that were raised in the survey. This survey is from last year, where educators in higher education were asked, have you integrated artificial intelligence into your classroom to improve or streamline your daily teaching? And 60% said that they had. And this is from last year. So I'm pretty sure the numbers have gone up. Another question that was raised pertained to the most commonly used AI tools in the classroom. So the question was, what AI-based tools or applications have you encountered in educational settings? So here, about 51% of the teaching community had used AI-powered educational games. About 43% used adaptive learning platforms, and 41% used automated grading and feedback systems. So it seems that use of AI tools is on the rise. The most popular AI tools being used these days are, of course, Microsoft Copilot, Google Notebook LM, and ChatGPT. Today, we are going to focus on Google Notebook LM. Then, of course, AI has some benefits for educators. A lot of the tasks can be automated, so it results in saving our time. It also can enhance our productivity simply because we can generate a lot of information just by using AI. And of course, we can also develop personalized learning. And especially for students who have some special needs, we can tailor our lesson plans to them and give them special treatment. So some specific examples for teaching purposes using AI, we have discussed how we can generate multiple choice questions last month. And today we are discussing how we can generate podcasts. We can also actually generate glossary of key terms. We can also generate short questions and answers using AI. We can also summarize texts using AI. So today our focus is going to be on creating podcasts. And next month, we will try and see how we can make reading guides using AI. And in the month of May, we will talk about how we can use AI to make IP case law summaries. As educators, we know that there are different types of learners. There are some learners who are visual learners, some are auditory, others are reading learners who thrive when they read something, they learn better, and then there are kinesthetic learners as well. And today our focus is to address the needs of our auditory learners through, of course, creating podcasts. So the first step is selecting content. What is the right content, or what type of content is most suitable for generating podcasts? Well, there are some possible choices. As an IP law teacher, I would choose a complex treaty, for example, Berne Convention. I would use that and make a podcast out of it. I would also use legal texts that are often taught or used. So for example, we could think about the TRIPS agreement, which we use, the TRIPS agreement for 1994. We often use it to trace stuff back, whether we are teaching copyrights or patents or trademarks, we refer to the TRIPS agreement quite often. I would use that as a possible choice, as a good choice for generating a podcast using AI. We could also use widely known but not adequately understood directives or any other legal text which is used a lot but not really understood. So GDPR could be an example here. Or even the Digital Single Markets Directive could be a good possible choice. The kind of texts that I would not recommend you use are those that are unpublished texts. So texts that maybe a colleague of yours is working on, or you yourself are working on, and you think it would be really relevant. But then we don't want to commit any copyright violations. We want to avoid copyright infringements. For those reasons, unpublished texts are probably not a good choice. Then I would not use a text that I myself, as a teacher, I'm not familiar with. And the reason is, then I would not be able to discern whether the podcast that has been generated using AI is good enough. So that's why any text that you use for generating a podcast, you should be really well conversant with that. Then the second step would be to select the appropriate AI tool. So our first step was selecting our text. The second step is selecting the AI tool. The kind of AI tool that you decide to go with actually depends on a couple of factors. It depends on your own level of expertise. Are you very well conversant with AI tools? Maybe you will go in for an advanced version. If this is your first time, you might want to stick to some commonly used, easy to use tools. The second point that you might want to consider is the time that you have available. How much time do you have? What are the kind of resources that you have available as well? Do you have equipment at all? Do you have the time to invest in searching for the right equipment? So all these factors will go on to influence your decision of selecting the right AI tool for you. Today, we are going to look at Notebook LM, and we will also look at 11 labs. So as a trial, I picked Notebook LM. And the reason why I chose to go with Notebook LM today is because it is really user-friendly. So like I said, our first step was selecting the right text. The second step was to select the right appropriate AI tool. And now our third step is that we are going to upload the text. So once we decided that it is Notebook LM that we are using, you will find that you will open up or come across this web page. So on this web page, you can see the tool is asking you to upload your source. So here you can upload a PDF document. You can upload a text file. You can also upload an audio file. So you select, you save the file on your computer, and then you upload the chosen file over here. After that notebook, you will see a page that looks like this. I will show you the page just in a moment. But I chose to go with the Digital Single Markets Directive as my source. And then the step 4 is generating the podcast. So there is nothing more than pressing on this button that says generate. All I've done is I've uploaded the Digital Single Markets Directive. And this conversation is generated by itself. So I haven't put in any script. This is a script that this AI tool generates by itself. So it seems like there are two people having a conversation about the Digital Single Markets Directive. It is that easy. All you need to do is upload the document that you want to be converted into a podcast, and then the digital tool will itself convert that document into a podcast. And the podcast, it seems like a very normal conversation. So they try to usually convert complex material into easy to comprehend language. And then it seems like a conversation. So this is how easy it is to generate this type of a podcast. So of course, there are certain advantages here. Ulrika, did you have a question?
Yes, just a small question. Do you recommend, for how long do you think that this video or this podcast should be? Is it like, do you recommend between like 8 and 10 or 8 and 12 or?
Yeah,
So
that's a very good
assume
question.
that you choose the time.
Here you don't choose the time. Here, the podcasts that are generated are on an average 10 to 12 minutes long.
Okay.
Which I believe for a document like a directive or a regulation is quite good. So the kind of length that I would recommend for a podcast of this nature, I would say 10 minutes is good.
Okay.
And as a teacher, you can also choose to cut snippets, just bits and pieces of the kind of information that you want. So my recommendation would be to go for not more than 10 to 12 minutes.
So do you have, because one question is, do you have any recommendation on length of your documents? Approximately like 10 pages, or do you know?
I think we have a lot of options. So when it comes to a podcast on a document like this, where it's a directive, I would say I would upload the entire directive, because I know that Notebook LM would not usually go beyond 10 to 12 minutes. And I would like the entire document to be summarized in the podcast. So for that reason, that's what I would do. So of course, there are certain advantages. I will go on to, if there are no other questions at this point, I will just move on to discussing the advantages and disadvantages of creating a podcast with Notebook LM. So as you saw, the advantages, of course, are that firstly, it is efficient. It is efficient content conversion. It doesn't take that much time. Yes, when you upload your document and till the time the podcast is created, it takes about 20 minutes max. And I've experience of having worked with about 15 podcasts using Notebook LM. And on an average, the time spent was about maximum of 20 minutes. And then here, there is no recording equipment that is needed. So all you need is your computer and access to Notebook LM, and the access is free for Notebook LM. So it has many positive points and many advantages. However, there are also certain disadvantages. As a teacher, the students would like to listen to your voice. And these are AI generated voices. So these are not yours, so they don't obviously sound authentic. They are not authentic. Then another problem is there is potential for inaccuracies, because sometimes AI tools, they collect material from the internet, and that access to the material that they have may or may not be accurate. So you will always have to listen for potential inaccuracies. With Notebook LM, one cannot edit the content. I've heard that now it's possible, but I don't know how. Until 2 weeks ago, it wasn't possible to edit the content that is generated by Notebook LM. You cannot even change the voices. So these are some of the disadvantages of using Notebook LM. So I would leave it up to you to decide whether maybe you would like to start off using Notebook LM if you've never tried to create podcasts, simply because it's easy, it's efficient, and you don't require equipment. And once you have learned, then maybe you would like to try some other tools. And we'll have a look at some of the other tools. So if you wanted to make your podcast even better, that is, if you wanted to have the option to edit the content, then you can use 11 Labs. So if you use 11 Labs, you have the option to edit the content because you get access to the script. You can also edit the script. So let's have a look on how you can do that. So the other tool is 11 Labs. It's again text to speech. That's what you would like to do. So you will open a new project. Then you would want to generate a podcast, and it works in a similar way. So you will come across this page, which is your studio. Here you will click on Generate Podcast. And then here you will see that there is space to upload your content. You can upload a PDF, you can upload a text file, you can also upload Word files. Then you also have the option to directly link to a web page, if that's what you want to use as your source. Sometimes you may be working on multiple projects and you may be working with, for example, let's say copyright law, and you have a project on copyright law where you're using Information Society Directive and you're also using the Digital Single Markets Directive. So you already have that project open. You could download the content or link the content from that existing project. Another advantage here in this tool is that you can choose your format. It is a conversation format, but then there are also other formats that are available. Another difference from Notebook LM is that here in 11 Labs, you can choose the voice of your host. You can also choose the voice of the guest. So if you've chosen the conversation format, you have multiple types of voices available. Another huge advantage is that you can make a podcast in 40 different languages. So if you come from different parts of the European Union and you wanted to generate a podcast in Italian or Swedish or Danish, then you could actually choose those languages here. Then there is something called voice cloning that can be done in this under 11 Labs. So here you could do voice cloning, but that is not a free feature. And 11 Labs, I think it costs about $22 per month to use this, if you want to use all the features. So if you do voice cloning, that would mean that you can add your own voice, and your podcast would appear in your own voice. So once you have uploaded the document, you have chosen the host voice and the guest voice, the podcast will be generated. So let's say you listen to the podcast, but you're not happy with the output. So you think there is some misleading information that the podcast is showing. So instead of 40 voices, 40 languages, the podcast is saying 30 languages. So you'd want to change the script. In 11 Labs, you have the option to edit the script. So you can change for 30 to 40. Or if you wanted to add some more data, some more information for your students, then you could also add that and then generate the podcast again. If you took the voice cloning feature, then you could easily add your own voice and generate the script, and the podcast would then be generated in your voice. So there are a lot of options, but it is not completely free. Like Notebook LM. So these are some of the differences. One other thing that one could do if one is using 11 Labs is, as a teacher, after you have finished with your podcast, you could actually give a scenario to the students and give some reflection questions. So before they come to class, they need to listen to the podcast and reflect on some of the questions that you've stated at the end of the podcast. So this is 11 Labs. It can be used for doing podcasts. And of course, there are certain challenges and opportunities of using AI in general for developing podcasts and also for the purposes of teaching. And I'd like to touch upon some of them. So, of course, we know that there is algorithmic bias. And even when you develop podcasts, you will come across this bias. And then you have to be careful about that. Then, of course, fake content. So like I said in the beginning, I gave you the example of the US advocates, some of those have lost their licenses because they used AI to, the problem was not that they used AI to generate their brief. The problem was that AI cited certain cases, certain case law, which they didn't check. And that case law actually didn't exist. And for these reasons, they lost their licenses, that they produced some evidence in court which did not exist. So as teachers, as responsible teachers, we have to use AI responsibly. and check the content that is being generated. Having said that, I still think that using AI for podcasts and also for other purposes has actually has a lot of opportunities to enhance learning. For example, if you pair your podcast with multiple choice questions, which we looked at last month, it can actually deliver a really good content to the students. And these multiple choice questions, if they are made accessible to the students, they can attempt them multiple times. That enhances their learning. I also use podcasts and AI to counter superficial thinking. So, for instance, I ask students if then questions. So, this is what the law says. If this happens, what would your reaction be? Which kind of law would apply? What kind of paragraphs would you look into? So otherwise, generally, the answer of the student would be, I would use Information Society Directive. And that is at a very superficial level. I would like the students to dig deeper, go deeper into Information Society Directive. Which article of the Information Society Directive would you choose and why? So in that sense, it can counter superficial thinking. Then also, I think it's a great tool to push students to think about issues more deeply. So in a podcast, your podcast could not, we've just taken the example of making podcasts with legal texts, but actually you can make podcasts without any text, any legal text also. So you give the student a scenario and then in your podcast, and then you ask a series of questions to your student in that podcast. And that podcast would not be for more than 5 minutes. So this is something that you could request or ask the students to do before they come to class. And the students enjoy this technique because here they don't have to sit and read anything. They have to listen and they have to reflect before they come to class. And listening to podcasts can be done on the go. So even when they are, traveling in a train or in a bus or walking, they can listen. Because podcasts is what our students use actually also for entertainment these days. So I think it has a lot of potential. Using podcasts, you can really push your students to think more deeply in many ways. I also give my students scenario-based questions. So I will give them a scenario in a podcast, and then I will ask them, would you choose A, B, or C? What would be your answer? Reflect on it before you come to class. And in the class, instead of having an icebreaker, we straight away dive into the question that they were supposed to reflect on. And it really enhances student engagement. So these are some of the things some of the techniques in which you can use podcasts. And also, I think, having said that, it's really important to strike a good balance. It is, of course, important that we should retain and maintain our academic integrity. We have to take ethical considerations into our perspective. But at the same time, it is really important, I think, as a teacher, also to leverage, also to benefit from AI. And AI has a lot of potential to contribute and enhance our teaching and learning practices. Then again, I would still emphasize that please use AI responsibly. That is to say, think about biases, think about ethical concerns. Also, please also think about privacy issues. So I wouldn't just take any document. I would really think through which document I'd like to use to convert into a podcast. And then I would thoroughly check any material that is intended for use in classrooms. So I would make sure that the podcast that has been generated by the AI actually does convey what I wanted to convey, because AI can make mistakes. And AI is only a tool. Human oversight is necessary. I myself have observed and seen that sometimes AI comes up with references that are inaccurate. So it is vital that if AI comes up with a reference or says this was taken from this web page, that we actually as responsible teachers go and check out that page, whether that is an authentic site or not, just to check for accuracy and just so that we can make sure that we are not providing misleading information to our students. Because we need to set an example as educators that we are not violating or infringing upon anyone else's copyright while we are doing these podcasts. So these are some of the things that I wanted to say. I'm happy to develop any of the other ideas that I've shared with you or to answer your questions at this point.
Thank you so much, Priya. It was really, really interesting. I was thinking if we go back to, the first step, like creating the podcast and selecting the material and so forth.
Yeah.
I think that we have some question because when you talked, my reflection was that it seems like quite important still to be able, at least in the future, to edit the script and also maybe choose the time. And then I was also thinking of, because we had also a question actually, if it was possible to set the level of specialization of the outcome. But maybe it's like a course where you have the bachelor, maybe it's the first lecture, you want it to have the really basic level, or maybe you are in a master class, and if you have this digital single market directive, maybe you want to have it on another level. So can you say something about that maybe?
Absolutely, absolutely. So for classes, I think these are very, very good points to keep in mind. So in order to adjust the level and to adjust the time, I would actually generate a script first. So I would generate a script where I would ask an artificial tool, and I could use ChatGPT for that. I could use other AI tools for that. So let's say we have the specification that we don't want it for more than 10 minutes. We want it at intermediate level, and we want certain aspects to be highlighted. Then a good way to go about it would be actually first to use an AI tool to generate a script where all these prompts are input. That's your input where you say, I would like this podcast script to be set at intermediate level or advanced level. I would like it to be roughly of the length that would last about 8 minutes or 10 minutes. And then I would like to highlight, let's say, I would like to highlight articles 7, 8, and 10. And that's it. So it's like last time we said, it's all in the prompts. It's really important. And you're absolutely right. Selection of content is key. So in this scenario, to resolve this issue, we would actually first generate a script ourselves, then feed that script to be converted into a podcast. So that is one way to go about it.
That is really interesting, really, really interesting. But then I imagine that the AI also can help me with the lesson planning and where I should have a podcast and not, and so forth.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You can virtually use AI as your assistant and sometimes also as a peer to reflect. So oftentimes you can ask the AI to come up with reflection questions. And it might even give you ideas for what a good podcast title could be, or what for this level of students studying this subject, what are the different topics on which you can make podcasts, generate podcasts. So that kind of sparring you can also do with AI.
That is also interesting. And we have also another question that it takes quite a long time to generate the podcast. Is it any way that you can shorten that time so it becomes a more quick and efficient?
Oh, for me personally, whenever I have used Notebook LM, it generally doesn't go over 20 minutes.
Mhm.
So I can see that in the chat, someone has written that they usually LLM Google takes 30 minutes for them. I'm surprised. Usually it would take 20 minutes, but again, 30 minutes, I would say that's fine compared if we keep in mind that we don't have to use any equipment, we don't have to go into any studio to record, and we don't have to spend time on editing. Because when we were doing, because I still do podcasts where we go into a podcast studio and we record. And I know that it takes time just to record and then to edit. So I think our workload is reduced substantially by using AI tools.
But is there also, then PRIYA, is there also some AI-powered editing tools that you could improve the podcast or?
Absolutely, absolutely. So there are editing tools called, one is called Descript. I can just write it in the chat maybe. Descript, which can be used. Then we have another editing tool by Adobe. You can use those. There are also other platforms that can be used for recording podcasts. So if you're choosing, let's say you're selecting an AI tool, and today we just focused on Notebook LM and 11 Labs for the sake of, simplicity, and so that everybody could follow, but you can also use Zencastr. I can write that again in the chat. Zencastr, this can be used. You can use another platform again called Descript. That can be used. These platforms, Zencastr and Descript, with these platforms, you can actually do remote recording because they have remote recording possibilities. So let's say you and I wanted to record a podcast and we are sitting in different countries. We could essentially use one of these platforms to record a podcast. And if we did that, automatic transcript would be generated and editing function would be virtually seamless. So there are a lot of tools that are available. A lot of professional podcasters use Zencastr, 11 Labs, and Descript to do their podcasts. And and the editing function on these platforms is also quite seamless. It's quite easy to do. And then some of these platforms, they also offer show notes and timestamps. So show notes for our students, the way I think it can be helpful is because show notes can highlight the key takeaways from that particular topic. And if you have timestamps, then our students can actually go to that part which they haven't followed well, or that part which they would like to hear again. So these platforms that offer show notes and timestamps, they are very good for students to review and also to retain information. And if we combine the podcast that is generated on these tools with show notes and timestamps, and then if we wanted to make it even better, we could actually also align question and answers or quiz and tie those together with the podcast. So virtually you are generating one entire topic and you're making it quite wholesome for the student to practice that particular topic by themselves multiple times, because some students need practice. Others can listen and retain. Like we talked right in the beginning, that there are different types of learners. Some will need to write and some will need to read again and again. Others would like to listen and they'll be fine. So by doing this, we are actually combining and addressing the needs of multiple types of learners that we have.
So it's almost like toolkit.
It's like
you can have the audio and you have the transcript and you have the quizzes and maybe some sort of other questions and so on and so forth.
Yes.
For example, for one directive.
Yes,
with
for one
help
directive.
of AI.
Yeah. Yes, it's really useful. And with some tricky materials, like let's say the GDPR, when it came, there were issues with understanding because it was a very large document. So in that scenario, you could actually use AI first to bounce off ideas, then to generate a script, and you could highlight what you wanted. You could also specify the level of your students. Is it intermediate level? Is it beginners level? Is it advanced level? And then you could generate a script which is quite well structured, and you could ask the AI to make the script engaging, right? And then you could say, I would like to encourage critical thinking. So at the end of the podcast, can you suggest some questions that would encourage critical thinking? Can you put in some thought-provoking questions? Can you put in some scenarios? And then you could convert that into a podcast.
Yeah, and also then maybe add on a quiz for more, I mean, simple facts and so on and so forth. But I was also thinking of, so for example, can a AI tool also be used to facilitate students, I mean, questions and answers sessions related to podcast? But because sometimes I was thinking, for example, if you have the InfoSoc directive, I mean, it's a huge directive with a lot of articles and so on and so forth, and a lot of questions when it comes to limitations. And is it also possible to use it in that way?
I think it is. I think that would be a very good way to use it. And also at times what you could do, because let's say limitations in the Information Society Directive is something as teachers we really want our student to know. We also want them to have examples ready so that they can retain that information in a much better way. So you could potentially also ask the AI to suggest what kind of examples can one give which match the limitations. So I would maybe chunk up the Information Society Directive into bits and pieces, and then only focus on one aspect at a time that I would like my students to work on. And then, like you suggested, you can ask the AI to generate question and answers or multiple choice questions that would help students retain that information. That would help also test students on that basis and that information. So I think we can save a lot of time. We can improve coherence. We can enhance engagement. We can activate student participation by using these AI tools, one by one or also in combination with the different techniques that are available.
Another question is, are there any AI tools for podcasting that can run on a PC locally rather than on the cloud? So, for example, if you don't want to upload things into a cloud,
yes,
you know, if there's a possibility.
Oh, that's a very good question. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. But I do know that no, using AI and not using on the cloud, no, I'm sorry. I'm not sure about that. But in the interest of confidentiality, if that is a priority, actually, what I would do is I would make the podcast myself, record the podcast, maybe using Panopto or maybe using the other tools, go into a studio or just use your own microphone like we're talking right now, and use Panopto to do the podcast. And then I could maybe use the edit function. But even in that case, you would have to upload it to the cloud, I imagine. No, I think I will have to say that you can use Adobe to edit it, but then that's not using AI at all. That's a general tool that you can use. We do it. We still do it. We do traditional podcasts. So we do traditional podcasts at CBS by using our local studio or by using Panopto. And when we do that, we are not using the cloud, and we are doing it locally on a PC. So I think it's possible, but then it's not an AI tool that you're using.
But still, you
So
can. I mean, you can use the AI tool to get ideas and so
you
forth.
can get AI tools
yeah.
to get ideas. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can get AI tool to get ideas, but then record locally.
Yeah.
Because the AI tool can give you a script which is well structured, engaging, and relevant, thought-provoking, and has critical thinking questions available or suggest that. But then I would then, if it is so confidential, then I would just record it on my device, local device.
But I was thinking of another thing. Can you also use, I mean, AI tools like, for example, DALL-E for podcast branding? Then,
yes,
if you have made your fantastic podcast.
Yes, absolutely. So a lot of teachers are doing that. So they are using Canva, they are using DALL-E to make attractive visuals before they publish their podcast. So you can publish your podcast on platforms like Spotify and Apple. And for that, you need visuals. And DALL-E and these tools, they help make the visual more appealing. And you can also create branding material without really needing advanced design skills. So I'm working in an EU project. And in that project, we have students who are able to use these tools to create these visuals. And that definitely enhances the look. So depending on the time that you have to invest in your podcast, you could use these tools. Both Canva and DALL-E, they are very, very good for generating branding materials.
Oh, now we got the recommendation where you can easily download locally a model, provided that you have a good PC. You could
that's
probably
fantastic.
try to make. Yeah,
that's
so we
fantastic.
have yeah.
We have the answer. Yes,
we have the answer.
So we learn.
But then I want to have a follow-up question when you said upload, because when it comes to uploading or publishing,
yes,
what kind of platforms do you think is the best platform for publishing? Is it like Blackboard, Canvas, or is it like, Spotify? Or so should it be some public, or should it be like just a learning platform?
I think it really depends. We have podcasts that we have been using on our Canvas, like local platforms, which are only for the university. But then now, in the past 6 to 8 months, we've had this trend where we are also publishing our podcasts on platforms like Spotify and Apple. So you will find a lot of CBS podcasts on Spotify, and virtually each department has made their own channel on Spotify. So they talk about the teaching that they're doing. They also talk about research that they've done. And I'm personally involved in a podcast which is about an EU project that we are leading at CBS. So we have something called Podcraft, where we are uploading our podcasts. So I think Spotify and Apple Podcasts, these are good platforms to publish on if you want your podcast to be public. Also educational purposes. For educational purposes, these are very good platforms. They're widely used. Then there are also certain AI tools that you can use for podcast distribution. So we have something called Buzzsprout, which simplifies the process of distribution of your podcast. So you can see that all you need to do is use this tool, and this tool will automatically upload, distribute, and also make analytics. And it will make it's making it easier for educators to reach a much broader audience. So if you want, I can also maybe just write the name of the platform in the chat. It's called Buzzsprout. It's a podcast distribution platform. So this is one of the best ones. There's also another one called Anchor. And Anchor.fm it's called. It can also be used to distribute podcasts. But if in terms of publishing, I think it really depends the kind of audience you want to reach. If it is primarily for your students of your university or just for your class, then I would probably just restrict myself to Canvas. But otherwise, if you think it can be used again and again, and also by students of other universities, because it is the topic that is more interesting, and the deciding factor is the topic and not the particular group of students, then I would actually also consider publishing it on Spotify.
Okay, then I have the last question for you before we end. And can you say something about your students' reactions? I mean, do they like it? What is the what kind of feedback do you get?
My students tend to like the podcasts that are in my own voice the best. I don't know why. I was hoping that they will be happy with the others as well. But students tend to appreciate those podcasts, maybe because they have a personal touch and maybe because that's what they're used to. But I've taught some of my students actually to use Notebook LM also to review material by themselves. So if they are not learners who thrive in reading, I've told them they must read because I think that it's essential. But if they want to review, I would say for reviewing purposes, you can use Notebook LM. But again, we always say it with a pinch of salt, like take it with a pinch of salt, because AI can still make mistakes. So we are not at that stage. But generally, I think students really appreciate podcasts that are done in your own voice. And in terms of time, actually, students had very interesting feedback. They wanted podcasts that did not last more than 15 minutes. Because they thought that they generally lose their train of thought by that time, or they get exhausted. Their attention span generally lasts 15 minutes. That's the kind of feedback that I've received, but I think maybe optimal is 10 minutes. And if it is just something that you want your student to reflect on, so if it's reflection questions or you want to pique their interest, and it is something like a replacement of an icebreaker in class, then I would not exceed more than 5 minutes, actually. Sometimes I also use podcasts done by colleagues, by other colleagues from other universities, of course, with their permission. So I'm using podcasts not only done by myself, but also by other colleagues that are well respected.
But just a follow-up question. Do you also use very, very short ones then? Like just, I mean, 2-3 minutes. Could that also be efficient? Just to come up with some questions or reflections or think of this and.
Yes, I think that would be very interesting to do. Personally, I haven't done any podcasts which lasts less than 5 minutes.
Okay.
Maybe 4.5 to 5. But I would definitely like to experiment with the shorter version, simply because you would like your students to reflect before they come to class on certain things, and it could be a good way to do that. So thank you for the idea, Ulrika.
Yeah, thank you so much. Very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Well, thanks to both of you, to PRIYA for presenting brilliantly, to Ulrika for challenging very much and making so many questions, to PRIYA, to our audience for their input, for making this session alive as much as possible, and it was so. So I think we explored quite well the issue of podcast making for us, for our community, for our stakeholders, and also podcasts, even considering podcasts as clips for the future, okay, in the shorter versions. I would wish to remind all of you that these sessions, the current sessions, are recorded and therefore you will have access to it within 48 hours. So you will be able to review the material that PRIYA has prepared, the questions that the presentation made by PRIYA. So we will present not only the slides of the presentation, but also the registration of the current encounter, so that you can navigate with the wealth of information that has been given today for constructing your own podcasts. Our next session will be dedicated to also to AI and IP, but in another format. The issue will be, as mentioned already by PRIYA, it will be making reading guides with AI. So making reading guides connected to IP with AI. And there, after Ulrika's brilliant moderation, we will have another brilliant moderator, Professor George Papanicolaou from the Harokopio University of Athens, who will be on the 24th of April, your moderator, PRIYA, for the session dedicated to making reading guides using AI. I know that for some of you, this will be just right after the Easter break. So time to thinking already of the new programs of the new academic year as of September, and for all our constituents starting to think also of what to do after summer. So be with us again for the third Global Digital Encounter specifically dedicated to AI and IP. All my warm thanks to PRIYA and to Ulrika, and of course to all of you for being next to us in this new adventure, and also for embracing with confidence and due caution technology, AI technology, for the best of our stakeholders and for their interests. Thank you very much, and have a nice evening for those who are in Europe. Have a nice day or a nice night for those who are on other continents.